Good afternoon. It's Friday, August 23rd, 2019. We've got our tank log up there, so let's figure out what's going on. Our pH is holding at 7.8. Our ammonia is 0.25 parts per million, and our nitrates are 0 parts per million. If you remember last episode, the shepherd and I went down to the lake to see how much different the water parameters were at the lake, and we determined that the only real difference, other than the fact that the lake is a self-cycling body of water, is that the water in the lake is harder. So that means you can't use lake water for this purpose. So it was time to do a water change anyway, and I got to thinking about this tank. What is the real purpose of this tank other than to, entertain or amuse me? The tank has no purpose, really. So I decided that I would give it a little more serious thought. So when I took a look at the water parameters before doing a water change, I was very surprised to see that the ammonia had jumped up to 1 part per million. The nitrites were at 0.5 parts per million, and the nitrates were at 1 part per million. So we're going to skip all the muddy tank shots, and just suffice to say that I suffered through a day of muddy tank with nothing pretty to look at. But here you see it after I put a sand cap on and I started replanting it. So here I have dropped in the Malaysian Trumpet snails, and I think I lost maybe 3 of them, but not more than that. In the lower part of the picture, you can see the big mama or big papa snail. I left that snail shell because it will decompose in the water, even though that trumpet snail did not make it. And within 10 or 15 minutes, most of these trumpet snails went nose diving down to the substrate, except for this one little guy who was really hungry and went to find a breakfast buffet. Who can blame him after being in a stainless steel bowl for about, 36 hours. You can see this crypt had a pretty good start from being in the tank for about a month. All the crypts were shooting out little baby plants, and I separated all of them and decided that they would probably be okay. Even if there was a little bit of melt, they would be okay, and so I made separate plants. But the big surprise was the dwarf water lily. It was bigger and much healthier than I really realized as I was trimming it every other day to get the tall leaves to not reach the water, or the surface, I'm sorry. So I noticed that it too was sending out runners, and I decided to pull off 3 really healthy runners and plant them also in the substrate. There's a problem now because this dwarf lily needs a home. Now I have a half-gallon mason jar. I can toss her in there. I can even let her float, and she'll be fine for a little while till I can figure out where to put her. So let's throw those tank parameters up there again. This is after I was done scaping. The Malaysian trumpet snails were rooting around, some of them were looking for food, and this is what we found. The first thing I noticed, having recorded all these numbers, is that I waited too long for a water change. And the reason that I waited too long is because that big snail died and it was causing spikes. And the cycle of this tank is not set yet. It's not stable yet. Now, in truth, changing the cap and taking out the pebbles and putting in the sand, doing all this disruption of the water column and the ecology of the tank has destabilized it again. I'm not going to sugarcoat that or soft soap it. I've just destabilized the tank again. So let's talk about tank logs, why they're important, and why everyone should be keeping one, especially new aquarists. So over the last couple of broadcasts, you have seen me put up tank logs and talk about their importance. Now let's talk about what I changed that makes this tank unstable again, potentially. The first thing is I took the cap of pebbles off and switched to sand, which I will tell you I boiled probably half the sand up to 180 degrees and held it at 180 degrees for a half an hour to sterilize that part of the sand. The next thing I did was I treated, once I had put the sand in, I treated the plants separately with hydrogen peroxide solution, which will kill BBA and all other algae. It will kill fungus and it will destroy snail eggs, which you guys already know I have pond snails. The third thing that I did was I removed two sources of cleaner for excess nutrients in the water, so decaying plant matter and decaying livestock, in this case the snail dying, that caused those spikes in an unstable aquarium. And I removed both the water lettuce and the larger mother dwarf lily plant. Now that causes there to be a lot less plant material to absorb nutrients. And the last thing that I did was I added 1 cup of river water straight from the river to replenish some of the beneficial bacteria that may have been killed by the hydrogen peroxide. So why did I do these 4 things? Well, that goes back to me pondering what exactly is the purpose of the tank. And when I took out the water lily and took the runners off of it and saw how healthy and how big it was, it occurred to me that I could make this small 3-gallon nano tank into a grow out tank for both baby plants and perhaps shrimp fry or fish fry. Maybe. I don't think fish are going to make it in this tank. I think it's just going to be shrimp at this point. So there's 2 really important questions that you guys should be asking yourselves, those of you that are new to this hobby. And the first one is obviously, how did I know that anything was out of place when everything looked fine? Um, Everything did look fine. I was really pleased. But I also knew, because I do a lot of research, that Malaysian trumpet snails really like to get under the substrate and root around and eat dead plant roots and that kind of stuff. And they could not get down into the substrate with that large pebble cap. And then the second question is, why do you think that these changes would give you the results you wanted? Again, I'm going to have to fall back on doing research. I read a lot, and not just about aquariums, but about a lot of things. I'm no biochemist. I'm certainly not a marine biologist either. But I rely on people who are much more knowledgeable than I am in this hobby. And when I hear 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 50 of them all saying the same thing, I trust their advice because they're generously giving it for free. And all they ask is that the people who read their thoughts and comments put into practice good animal husbandry or good livestock husbandry in this case, to further the hobby. The hobby is filled with a lot of misinformation and a lot of just dumb things, which is a rant I will reserve for another day. But these people who patiently answer questions over and over and over and over again do it because they want that hobby to be self-policing and to have very high standards, and I agree with that. So now 2 more questions may have popped into your head. The first one, what should be recorded in a tank log? And you can see on the left the things I keep posting. I keep posting pH, ammonia, nitrites, and nitrates. And then also I have added temperature because it was chilly this morning and the windows were open. So I assumed that there might be some temperature fluctuation. In addition to that, every time you add chemicals, for example, if you're adding some micronutrients or some fertilizer, or you're changing fish food or shrimp food, all those things should be recorded on the day you do it. That includes adding new livestock, or maybe you have 2 or 3 of them die off. You should make a note of that so you can go back through your tank log and troubleshoot what changed that might have caused that. And the second question you might be asking yourself is, how often should information be recorded? Well, if nobody's ever invited you, let me be the first to invite you to Water Change Wednesday. You can do it any day of the week. Oftentimes I used to do it on Sunday. But whatever day you choose to do it the same day every week so that you can watch your ammonia levels, your nitrate and nitrite levels, and even your pH if you're artificially manipulating it somehow for whatever reason, and there are many. Record your water change, and also record if you've done what I just said, either add livestock or fertilizer or take things away. And that way, over time, as I've just said, you'll be able to flip back through the pages and say, oh, I wonder if these plants died because, or, oh, I just increased my lighting by 10 times, and now my shrimp are really agitated, or my fish are really agitated and jumpy. Maybe I should back it off a little bit. That's all we have for you today. I hope that this little lesson on tank logs was helpful to those who are interested in the aquarium hobby, and I hope you learned something from my little 3-gallon nano Walstad method tank update. Until we see you again, I hope you had a good Friday. I hope that your weekend is fun and that you are blessed. If you like this kind of content, please like, comment, and share. And if you really like it or you're really curious, subscribe and hit the notification button. Till I see you again, have a great weekend.